Get your hand off that control valve before I break your fingers. Terran's grip trembled slightly, but not with fear. The muzzle of his plasma sidearm hovered in midair, aimed at the shape half-veiled by flickering, dying lights in the corridor. He thought he was alone in the derelict station, but apparently, fate had other ideas. A slender figure turned, revealing a faint sheen of pale violet luminescence gliding across scaled shoulders. The alien woman's eyes glowed brighter than the overhead bulbs, and her voice reverberated low in the stale air. "You are trespassing," she said, each syllable weighted, both threatening and strangely melodic. Terran almost lowered his gun because something about her presence tugged at him, made his heart pound and his breath hitch. But he steadied himself. He had survived far too many lonely salvage runs to lose nerve now. He never took his aim off her, though his lips curved into a sideways smirk. "Trespassing? Didn't see your name on the door." The tension in the corridor crackled with her reaction. She exhaled, a deep, deliberate breath that flared the pattern of light dancing down her neck and across the ridges of her collarbones. Terran swallowed. He had no idea what species she was, but the fractal shifts of luminous patterns under her pearlescent skin were mesmerizing. For an absurd moment, he wondered if that glow was natural or if she wore some kind of bioluminescent body paint. "You are not authorized to be here," she repeated, her posture coiled and ready. "This station is under my watch." Her accent was thick, each word dipped in an unfamiliar cadence. Terran's attention flicked to the control valve behind her. She was indeed safeguarding something, or so it seemed. Her hand hovered near a blinking panel, one he had planned to scavenge for salvageable electronics. The corporation that hired him insisted the old outpost was fair game, left to rot by the consortium that once managed it. But clearly, this woman believed otherwise. "I'm not looking for trouble," he lied. In truth, he was always skirting the edges of trouble. His entire life had been a series of near misses, from questionable trade deals to dusty backwater escapades. He had come to this dead station with the intention of scrounging any valuable components. Instead, he found her, a breathing, glowing enigma, and everything inside him jolted into high alert. Her gaze flicked to the sidearm. She took 2 steps, slow and deliberate, until the light revealed more of her features. Terran's breath caught. She had a graceful face, with ridges sweeping over her cheekbones, leading into faintly shimmering filaments that branched at her temples. She wore some kind of patchwork garb, evidently practical and worn from use. She didn't exactly look like corporate security. More like an exile with a personal mission. Despite the tension, his curiosity ballooned. "I'm Terran," he said, voice calmer now. "I came for salvage. Nothing else." The moment he said it, the station's overhead lights flickered off again, plunging them into near darkness. In that darkness, her body's glow surged more vividly, revealing delicate patterns swirling across her arms and down her torso. Terran's chest constricted with an unexpected awe. He'd never seen anything like her in all his cycles drifting from one end of the galaxy to the other. She cocked her head. "Zara," she answered. "I guard what remains here." A single mechanical hiss signaled that the life support system was about to sputter. Terran felt the shift in air pressure, the dryness clinging to his throat. Whatever stability the station had was failing. And yet here she stood, stubbornly holding her ground. "Guard what, exactly?" Terran asked. He could see no immediate signs of salvage that might have sentimental or strategic value. Most corridors were stripped bare except for a handful of functioning lights and ancient control panels that still hummed with residual power. "This place is basically junk. Unless you're waiting on rescue." She glanced warily at the sidearm, unimpressed. Her lips pressed into a firm line. "I do not seek rescue. I have a vow to fulfill. My people, they built these stations long ago, some in alliance with offworlders, some for our own secret traditions. This outpost may look lifeless, but it holds something essential to my kind. And you, human, are meddling in territory that's not yours." Her luminescence pulsed, as if shaped by her agitation. Terran let out a half-scoff. "You don't exactly look like you have an army behind you, Zara." If there's something valuable here, you'll have to do better than threats to keep me from it. The bravado spilled out automatically, a reflex he'd honed after years of negotiations gone sour. A flicker of doubt churned in his stomach, though. She didn't seem to be bluffing. Her posture implied she could spring forward and tear him apart if she chose. Or maybe her species had some hidden venom or telekinetic ability. Taryn's mind spun with possibilities, none of them particularly reassuring. She didn't strike. Instead, she stepped closer, letting the glow around her shift from a fierce violet to a gentle turquoise. The effect softened her expression, as though she was reconsidering him. You may not know what you walk into, she said quietly. Humans often do not. But if you truly came for salvage alone, maybe you can help me more than you can possibly guess. She raised her hand as if to catch the drifting dust motes in the air, and the glow along her fingertips brightened, drawing his eyes. The outpost is failing. This station was designed with symbiotic systems my people once understood. I have tried to keep it going, but I can only do so much alone. And if these systems fail entirely, we lose something far more precious than steel and circuits. Taryn hesitated. He felt the dryness of the station's thinning air. What do you need? Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. Why would you help? He let out a short laugh. Because I need air. Because I don't want to die in this floating coffin. And because maybe, just maybe, if there's valuable tech here, I can salvage it after ensuring neither of us suffocates. He paused, letting a hint of genuine concern seep into his tone. Are you the only one here? She dipped her head in a slight nod. The rest left or died. I remain. A flicker of pain crossed her features. This place is part of my heritage. Part of a vow I made. He lowered his weapon. Look, I'll help you stabilize what you can. Then we'll talk about salvage rights, share any spoils. That fair? Zara watched him for a moment, the luminous pattern swirling across her cheekbones. Then she inclined her head. Fair. But the way her gaze lingered on him suggested there was far more at stake than simple mechanical repairs. He tried to ignore the flutter in his chest. He had no time for distractions, especially ones that glowed and stood proud in the face of potential disaster. But the gravitational pull of her presence was impossible to dismiss. They walked deeper into the station together, Taryn guiding her with a handheld torch when the overhead lights failed completely. In that darkness, her body's glow lit the corridors in gentle waves, revealing metal struts and twisted scaffolding. The outpost had definitely seen better days. Several rooms were on partial lockdown, hissing with compromised atmosphere. Something had forced these zones into an emergency cycle, and Taryn couldn't help wondering how she had survived. Did her species require the same oxygen mix? Could she breathe minimal air? He had 1,000 questions, but Zara's expression discouraged idle chatter. They had work to do. In the main engineering section, Zara gestured to a row of cylindrical terminals that once regulated the station's power distribution. Taryn crouched and examined the brittle wiring, his pilot's gloves dusty from old insulation that crumbled at a touch. These are archaic, he muttered. I can maybe jury-rig a bypass. But you'll need a stable power source. He leaned in, rummaging through his salvage bag, looking for a portable battery cell. He found one small, leftover from his last job. This could give us a temporary jolt to keep basic systems running. I have no idea how long it'll last. Zara nodded and bent down beside him, close enough that he felt a gentle warmth radiate from her. Her filaments fluttered, brushing his shoulder. She had a faint, exotic scent, something reminiscent of night-blooming flowers. He inhaled reflexively, mind spinning with curiosity. When her gaze locked onto him, he forced himself to look away, focusing instead on the worn terminals. Her voice softened. Your technology is different from ours, but perhaps there is a point of compatibility. I've tried to keep these systems active by using the station's residual solar collector. But the collector has been offline for decades. If you can restore it, we might be able to bring the station to minimal function and protect the last of. She paused, swallowing as though the words held deep meaning. The last of what we came here to safeguard. He didn't press her for details. Not yet. All right, he said, hooking up some wires. I'll see if I can get partial power back, then we'll check the solar collector. Are you sure you can handle the atmosphere? The pressure is dropping across multiple decks. Her luminescent patterns flared a little brighter, as though triggered by emotion. My lungs can adjust for a time. You, on the other hand. She reached out and flicked the corner of his patchy oxygen regulator. You have limited capacity, correct? He shrugged. It's enough for short bursts in vacuum. Not enough for indefinite survival. He slid the portable cell into place, pressed a switch, and waited. The control panel sputtered, lights flickering to life in short intervals. A wave of relief coursed through him. At least they had partial power now. The station might not be a complete tomb. Zara exhaled with something close to relief. Then her eyes returned to him. Thank you, Terran? The sincerity in her tone took him by surprise, disarming him more than any threat could. Before he could respond, she stood and glided toward another corridor, her glow shifting to a cool lavender that danced along her form. Every movement hinted at a coiled grace. She paused at the threshold. We must move quickly to the collector. Hurry! He grabbed his pack and followed, ignoring the twist of unease low in his gut. He had come here chasing salvage. Instead, he'd found a woman with scales that shimmered in the dark, station systems on the brink of failure, and a vow that demanded her presence. He had no idea how deeply he was about to be pulled into her world. They ascended a metal staircase that groaned beneath their combined weight. The station was so old that entire sections had collapsed into disuse. Terran had to duck under half-fallen beams. Zara's slender form slipped through with hardly a sound, but each step for him was a clank of boots on metal. Finally, they reached a hatch that looked sealed from the inside. Zara placed her palm on a small sensor pad, and Terran watched in fascination as her glow seemed to interact with the device. She exhaled, and the swirling patterns along her arm brightened. A moment later, the hatch hissed open, revealing a small junction that branched off in multiple directions. How did you do that? Terran asked, stepping through behind her. Is that a key coded to your biometrics? She shrugged, the glow settling around her shoulders in waves. The station was designed with my species' genetic signatures in mind. The lock recognizes me. A leftover from days when we lived among this technology freely. Her voice softened, sadness creeping in. That feels like a lifetime ago. Terran didn't push. Whatever that sorrow was, it weighed heavy in her eyes. He tried to keep his focus on the immediate mission. They had to restore the solar collector. If they didn't, the station would continue hemorrhaging power, and both of them would be corpses drifting in vacuum soon enough. They navigated a maze of corridors until they reached a wide docking bay at the topmost level. Here, a massive window overlooked a swirling cosmic expanse speckled with distant stars. The partial flicker of powered lights gave the space an eerie glow. Debris littered the floor, broken cargo containers, scraps of netting, some half-buried mechanical parts. Zara moved with purpose toward a tall structure near the window, the solar array's control tower. Terran checked the readouts on a battered console. The collector's outside, he muttered. I can see part of it through the window, but it's retracted. Probably jammed. I'll need to run a manual reset. Zara set her hand on his shoulder, the warmth of her touch surprising him. You cannot go alone. The vacuum out there is unstable. Parts of the external plating are shredded from impacts. I will accompany you. He frowned. You can handle vacuum? Not indefinitely, she said. But I have methods to endure the pressure changes longer than you do. Let's just say my body is more adaptable. Terran nodded. I've got a spare suit in my ship, but it's one deck below. We'll need that. He tried not to stare too hard at her face, at the gentle crest of luminous ridges that adorned her cheeks. Something about being close to her made his chest tighten. She was fierce, proud, and definitely not human. Yet the more he looked at her, the more he recognized glints of vulnerability in her eyes. It stirred something deep inside him that he thought was long numbed by years of solitary drifting. They hurried to the hangar deck. Terran's small salvage shuttle was docked precariously after he forced the old airlock open. He rummaged inside for the spare vacuum suit, muttering curses when he discovered it had a torn seal. "Damn it," he muttered, holding up the damaged arm piece. "Not ideal, but I might be able to patch it. Got some sealant tape." He rifled through compartments until he found the tape. The two of them leaned over the suit, repairing the tear with careful precision. Zara examined the human-designed patches with mild curiosity. Her body was so close that Terran felt her exhalations against his cheek. She seemed unbothered by the cramped space or their proximity. But he could sense an underlying tension in the air, the kind that arises when two individuals share an unspoken understanding that something intangible, something electric, stirs between them. He focused on the patch job, swallowing the knot in his throat. It took nearly half an hour, but they made the suit functional enough. Finally, Terran donned it, testing the pressurization system. "Well, if I spring a leak out there, guess you'll watch me freeze, huh?" He tried to deliver the joke casually. Zara's eyes glimmered, her lips twitching in what he interpreted as a faint smile. "I will not let that happen," she said simply. Then she gestured for him to follow her to the external hatch. They moved through another set of corridors until they reached an airlock that connected to the station's outer hull. Zara pressed her palm to a sensor, muttering words in her native tongue. Terran caught only the tail end of what sounded like a prayer or invocation. He wondered about her culture, and about the vows she had alluded to earlier. When the airlock cycled, Terran felt the pressure shift. He inhaled carefully, double-checking his suit's readout. Zara's glow dimmed slightly, as though her body prepared for the vacuum. She offered him a reassuring nod, then opened the hatch. Together they stepped onto the station's hull, magnetic clamps on his boots activating with each step. The cosmic panorama stretched in every direction. Distant stars shimmered in the black void, and Terran felt that familiar awe that always struck him when he was outside any planetary orbit. Zara moved with eerie grace, as if the lack of gravity posed no hindrance. Terran took measured steps to keep balance on the rough hull. He spotted the jammed solar collector, a massive array that should have extended outward like the petals of a flower. Instead, it was curled in on itself, battered by micrometeor impacts. Panels dangled, half ripped from their moorings. "Damned if I know how to fix that," Terran radioed through his suit. Zara, whose mouth could not be read in the vacuum, inclined her head, her body glowing faintly beneath the swirling starfield. The suit crackled with her voice. "I will try to unjam the mechanism from above. You check the servo controls from below. The main guidance rod might be obstructed." He nodded and carefully descended to the lower portion of the array's control housing. His suit beeped occasionally, warning him of compromised plating, but he pressed on. Deftly, he pried open a panel and found twisted rods and jammed gears. The entire system looked ancient. He rummaged through his tool pouch, pulling out a small pry bar. He worked methodically, sweat beading on his forehead despite the low temperatures. Time passed in tense increments, punctuated by the faint echo of his own breathing. Above him, Zara leapt gracefully between girder-like supports. Her luminous pattern shimmered in staccato bursts, as if her body was uncertain how to metabolize the vacuum's cold. Terran worried she was pushing herself too far, but she showed no sign of retreating. Finally, with one last grunt, he wrenched a bent rod aside, freeing the mechanism. A hissing jolt of released tension made the entire array creak. Then, to his relief, it began to unfurl, the solar panels extending outward in a slow arc. Zara's voice crackled in his ear. "Yes. It's moving." She sounded triumphant. The station rumbled as the collector emerged, locking into place. Terran watched from his vantage point as ancient panels, dusty and chipped, caught the faint starlight. It was a modest victory, but one they desperately needed. They made their way back to the airlock carefully. The hull shuddered once, presumably from the abrupt shift in power distribution. At the hatch, Terran saw Zara falter slightly, a tremor passing through her. Without hesitation, he slid an arm around her waist, steadying her. The contact startled him. He felt the smooth ridges of her scaled bodysuit, and the subtle rise of her ribs as she breathed. Even through his suit, a wave of warmth cascaded over him. Their eyes met. She didn't pull away. They cycled back inside. The airlock repressurized slowly. Terran removed his helmet, inhaling the station's stale atmosphere with relief, though it was still thin. Zara leaned against the bulkhead, her filaments fluttering. "We did it," he said, a hint of a grin tugging at his mouth. She nodded, gathering her composure. "The collector will funnel power to critical systems. The air quality should improve. The station's core might come back online. Then we can." She paused, blinking as though suddenly dizzy. Terran instinctively reached for her arm to steady her again. "You all right?" Her gaze slid to him, and he noticed new luminescent patterns swirling across her chest. They pulsed in a rhythm that didn't match any he'd seen from her before. She let out a shaky breath. "I'm fine. It's just, the cycle is accelerating." He frowned. "Cycle?" She didn't explain. Instead, she straightened, as if forcing herself to remain composed. "Let us return to the engineering deck. We can see if the power is fully restored." Terran nodded, but her cryptic remark lingered in his mind. He recalled the way her glow changed colors in response to her mood or environment. Now, that glow had begun a new, erratic dance, one that seemed to draw him in, as if beckoning him closer. He tried to shake off the strange fascination. They had a task to complete, that was all. They wound their way back through the labyrinth of corridors to the engineering deck. Lights flickered more steadily now. Terran ran a diagnostics check on the console. The solar collector was feeding a slow but steady trickle of power into the station's main grid. Oxygen recyclers whirred softly. It was still precarious, but for the moment, they were no longer on the brink of suffocating. Zara touched a control on the console. Her expression tightened, and Terran saw the luminescent patterns around her neck shift from lavender to a deep, pulsing indigo. "Damage is extensive," she murmured. "But we have time now." He nodded, stepping closer. "So, about that vow you mentioned. What exactly is here that's so important?" He didn't hide his curiosity. Part of him wanted to pry open every secret she held, not just the ones about the station. She regarded him for a long moment, as though measuring his trustworthiness. "My people once maintained these outposts to cultivate an ancient form of living technology, call it a guardian of sorts. It's symbiotic, half organic, half machine. We used it to protect and nourish our homeworld's ecosystem, especially for critical transitions in our species' life cycles. Now, with our numbers dwindling, these guardians are even more precious. They bond with us when certain conditions are met." Terran raised an eyebrow. "A living machine? Where is it?" A flicker of pain crossed her features. "Dormant in the lower decks. The station's failing systems nearly killed it. I've been nursing it along with minimal power, but it needs to fully interface soon, or it will die. And with it, part of my people's future." He exhaled, trying to wrap his head around the concept. "So that's why you wouldn't leave." He took in her expression, the weariness etched around her glowing eyes. "Is this vow personal? A family obligation?" She nodded slowly, tension carving lines on her brow. "I was chosen to complete the rite. It's an honor. I cannot fail." Terran ran a hand over his stubbled jaw. "If it needs power, you've got some now from the collector, right? So maybe it's not too late." She looked at him, her glow intensifying. "There is another requirement," she said softly, voice catching. "The cycle. The guardians bond through a biological resonance with a living host. But my own body is lacking something. Or perhaps the guardian requires more than one set of frequencies to awaken. I don't fully understand. Our records are incomplete. But I believe it needs a second participant." She paused, letting the meaning sink in. "It may need a mate. Or at least, the melding of energies from two different pulses." Terran blinked, caught off guard. "Wait, are you telling me you need a partner for that? Like some kind of breeding ritual?" Heat flooded his face at his own blunt words. He wasn't entirely sure what she meant by cycle, but the undertones were unmistakably intimate. She didn't flinch at his candor. Her gaze remained steady, though the swirling glow around her cheeks shifted to a subtle pink. Our physiology is complex. We produce certain pheromones, combined with the energy field of a partner, that can unlock the guardian's dormant state. In the past, we would do this ritual with someone of our own species, chosen by the elders. But now, I am alone. Until you came. Terran's heart thumped hard in his chest. He wasn't certain if he found the notion more bizarre or strangely intriguing. And you think a human can do this? She bit her lip, frustration warring with uncertainty. I'm not certain. But the Guardian is responding. My glow pattern changed the moment we shared the corridor's air. It recognized something in you. That is why my body is reacting. She looked away, as though embarrassed. I sense it. A pull. But I don't know if it's enough. He was silent for a long time. The tension between them felt tangible, and he realized that the subtle flickers of her luminescence might well reflect her emotional state. There was a gravitational force drawing them closer, an instinctive reaction that neither fully understood. So, you're telling me that to save this Guardian, and by extension your people's future, I might have to merge with you. A soft laugh escaped her, laced with nerves. It's more like a sacred bonding. But yes. It involves physical and emotional union. The caretaker is incomplete without a mate to generate the right energies. Her voice turned introspective. This is not how I imagined fulfilling my vow. I prepared all my life to complete the cycle with one of my own kind. Now I stand here with a human, uncertain whether it will work, or what it even means for us after. He swallowed hard, torn between caution and a flicker of raw desire that ignited at the prospect. Zara was undeniably captivating, her presence enveloping him like a siren call. And the station's systems, plus this mysterious guardian, were in dire straits. All right, he said, stepping closer. If that's what it takes, I won't let this guardian die. But we should do it on our terms, not because we have no other choice. Zara watched him, her luminous eyes softening. Thank you. We should give ourselves time. The Guardian's chamber is in the lower decks, but the atmosphere there is unstable. Perhaps we can stabilize it first and see if additional power or some mechanical fix can buy us more time. Terran nodded. Let's do that. Yet as they set about checking the station's readouts and patching any remaining leaks, he found himself glancing at her again and again. Each time, she sensed his gaze, and a faint shimmer spread across her cheekbones. An unspoken awareness crackled in the air between them. He could only guess how the coming hours would test them both, physically, emotionally, intimately. They spent the next cycle patching ductwork and reinforcing the oxygen recyclers. With partial power restored, some of the station's ancient systems awoke from hibernation, blinking their archaic readouts. Terran worked side by side with Zara, occasionally stealing glimpses of her delicate profile. The strain of the task seemed to bring them closer, forging a bond in the face of adversity. She was no longer simply the exotic alien guarding an abandoned outpost. She was a person with burdens, with honor, with sorrow. That realization glowed in the back of his mind like a slow dawn. When at last they stood before the sealed doors to the Guardian's chamber, both felt a surge of trepidation. The readouts showed massive system failures on the other side. Terran engaged the manual override. Slowly, the doors groaned open, releasing a stale hiss of air. Beyond lay a wide, dark chamber lined with pillars and consoles that pulsed faintly under emergency power. In the center stood a large, organic-like shape fused with metal plating, a cocoon of sorts. Tubes and cables extended from it, plugged into a dais set into the floor. The dais itself was carved with intricate glyphs that Terran suspected belonged to Zara's culture. He swallowed, stepping inside with Zara. The air was thick, stifling, and tinged with an odd, electric smell. A gentle hum resonated from the cocoon, like a heartbeat. Zara approached reverently, laying her palm against a panel of what looked like living tissue. A wave of dappled color rippled across the cocoon's surface in response. It recognizes me, she whispered. But it waits for more. She turned to Terran, eyes heavy with meaning. If I do this alone, it will fail. I feel the pull, but I am not enough. He moved beside her, placing his hand over hers, feeling the cool yet strangely vital texture of the cocoon. The hum intensified. A jolt of energy tingled through his palm, making him inhale sharply. Zara's luminescent patterns flared in time with the cocoon's glow. The synergy between them was almost hypnotic, stirring a warmth in Terran's core he couldn't explain. He wondered if it was the Guardian's influence, or something deeper. She exhaled, her gaze meeting his. I should warn you. The cycle, once begun, is intense. Our species designed it to forge a deep bond, aligning body and mind and desires. He removed his hand, heart thudding. If I go through with this, will I survive? A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Yes. The cycle is not lethal. But you'll be changed. We both will. That is the nature of this bonding. It merges energies. She paused, stepping closer. If you fear this, I understand. I was prepared to do it alone, but the Guardian would have died. Now we have a chance. Still, I do not force you. The choice is yours. Terran studied her face, the vulnerability beneath her composure. He thought of all the times he told himself he was done running from the next risk, from the next jump into the unknown. Now here he was, faced with a possibility that felt equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. I don't know everything about your people's traditions, he said slowly. But I won't abandon you. If this is the only way, then I'm with you. She released a trembling breath. Then let me prepare the chamber. It's an involved process. Her eyes flicked to the side, as if uncertain how to proceed in front of him. Terran gave her space, letting her activate several consoles. The dais began to glow, and a faint hum pulsed through the floor. Patterns of light rippled across the pillars, reflecting the swirling glyphs. The air changed, thickening with an almost magnetic charge that pressed gently against Terran's skin. Zara turned back to him, her luminous cheeks flushed. Stand here. She guided him onto the dais, close to the cocoon's base. Terran's pulse hammered. He watched as she positioned herself opposite him, her arms slightly raised. Her eyes fluttered shut, and a kaleidoscope of color blossomed across her scales. The dais resonated with energy, and Terran felt tendrils of warmth creeping up his legs, coiling around his torso, as if invisible waves caressed his body. The Guardians of old had designed this ritual to be intense, to prime the participants for union. Terran inhaled in shock when he felt a wave of desire course through him, so strong that his hands trembled. His vision swam with images he couldn't place, glimpses of starfields, of alien structures, of a deep longing for connection. He stumbled slightly, pressing a hand to the cocoon for stability. Zara's eyes opened. Her voice came out low, laden with emotion. Let it in. Don't fight. He nodded, fighting the urge to flee. Slowly, deliberately, he allowed his mind to open to the sensations swirling around them. The station's air seemed charged with an intangible presence. A swirl of color erupted from the cocoon, dancing over Zara's body. She let out a quiet gasp, her gaze locking onto Terran's. Time slowed, and in that suspended moment, they took a step toward each other. She moved first, a trembling hand lifting to rest on his shoulder. He could see her pupils dilating, the faintest shiver in her parted lips. The pheromones she emitted were sweet and heady, enveloping him in an intoxicating haze. His own breathing grew ragged, and he closed the distance, sliding his arms around her waist, feeling the slight roughness of her scaled bodysuit under his palms. He pressed his forehead to hers, letting the swirl of color wash over them. It was so unlike anything he'd experienced. This wasn't just desire, it was a melding of souls, orchestrated by ancient technology. He felt her quiver in his arms, a mixture of fear and yearning. He, too, was afraid. But he was caught up in the urgency, in the sense that if they did not complete this bond, something vital would vanish forever. Their lips hovered near each other, breaths colliding. Then, in a surge of need, he claimed her mouth, the softness of her alien lips drawing a shiver along his spine. She let out a muffled moan, hands tangling in his hair. Her luminescent skin flared brighter, illuminating them in a riot of colors. Terran lost himself in the taste of her, the subtle differences in texture, the electric contact of her scales. The dais hummed louder, fueling the mounting heat between them. He trailed kisses along her jaw, careful of the ridges that flared across her cheekbones. She arched against him, her entire form pulsing with color. He felt the pounding of his own heart, echoed by the rhythmic throbbing of the cocoon. Each pulse seemed to push them deeper into shared sensation. The lines between them blurred. Her emotions flickered through him, and he sensed her awe, her trepidation, and her fierce determination to save what remained of her heritage. His hands roamed up her waist, feeling the contours of her body, the softness beneath the scaled suit. She gasped softly when he grazed one of the luminescent filaments along her collarbone. A jolt of pleasure reverberated through both of them. The Guardian's presence grew stronger, weaving around them like an unseen tapestry. Terran realized it was pulling them toward an inevitable crescendo, a union that transcended mere physical attraction. They sank to their knees on the dais. Zara's breath came in short, heated bursts against his ear. She pressed her forehead to his again, her voice quivering with need and vulnerability. "We're so close. Let go. Let the Guardian in." He nodded, though his rational mind was already dissolving in the haze of sensation. He let himself fall deeper, surrendering to the raw intimacy. She guided him gently, and he responded in kind, the station's failing lights flickering in a strobe that matched the quickening pace of their hearts. The chamber reverberated with power, and Terran sensed the Guardian stirring, awakened by their union. Moments turned into a timeless swirl of sensations, kisses, shared breath, whispered moans that echoed off the stone pillars. The dais's glow intensified, and with it came a surge of primal energy that coursed through Terran's veins. He felt as though he teetered on the brink of a cosmic threshold, one that promised both ecstasy and terror. Zara's luminescent markings flickered in frantic patterns, testament to the storm raging inside her. When the wave crested, Terran felt a rush of euphoria burst through his every nerve, magnified by the Guardian's silent roar. The chamber filled with light, and for an instant, it seemed the entire station shuddered in resonance. Terran and Zara clung to each other, gasping, pressed so close that he could feel the thunder of her heartbeat. Then, just as suddenly, the energy subsided into a quiet hum. He lifted his gaze to see the cocoon glowing with renewed vitality. Whatever the Guardian needed, it was now infused with life. He felt that same energy lingering in his own body, a strange sense of connection to Zara, to the station, to everything. She looked at him, her eyes wet with unshed tears. They remained locked together, hearts pounding in unison, the echo of that sublime rush still coursing through them. As silence settled, broken only by their ragged breathing, Terran wondered how this bond would change them. He wasn't sure what the next moments would bring, let alone the coming days or weeks. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: they had forged a connection that neither species nor distance could easily sever. The vow was complete, or at least this stage of it. The Guardian lived, pulsing gently at the heart of the chamber, linked to them through a delicate tapestry of resonance. Zara cupped his cheek, her luminescent patterns fading to a soft, gentle glow. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling. He pressed his forehead to hers again, too overwhelmed for words. They stayed like that for a time, entangled in the aftershocks of raw intimacy, uncertain what would happen when they finally separated. Eventually, Terran helped her to her feet. The station's lighting had stabilized, and the air no longer felt suffocating. With some effort, they gathered their clothes, each mindful of the new, unspoken bond between them. The Guardian's cocoon still glowed with quiet contentment, linked to them both. Zara casted a final, grateful glance. When they emerged from the chamber, Terran felt a subtle shift in the corridor's ambience. The old outpost had been given a fresh jolt of life, courtesy of the very bond that now bound him to Zara. They didn't speak much as they made their way back to engineering to check the readouts. Words felt inadequate in the aftermath of such a profound experience. To Terran's relief, the station's systems displayed stability. Oxygen levels were improving, and though the structure itself remained in disrepair, it was no longer on the brink of total collapse. Zara stood by the console, her hands resting lightly on the edges, a contemplative look in her glowing eyes. He could sense the swirl of emotions in her, as if they were his own. Finally, she turned to him, her expression shifting between vulnerability and a determined resolve. We have saved the Guardian for now. But the cycle's effects might continue. I feel a connection that won't fade. Terrence stepped closer, searching her face. Yeah, he said softly. I feel it too. He felt the comforting warmth of her presence in his chest, as though their hearts now beat to a shared rhythm. It was thrilling, but it also scared him. She lowered her gaze. In my culture, after such a bond, we would dwell together, learn each other's ways, continue the Guardian's legacy. But we are not on my homeworld, and you have your own life, your own path. He hesitated. The solitary life he led suddenly felt hollow. He wasn't sure if that was a genuine shift or the result of the bond. But seeing Zara standing there, luminous and hopeful, he knew he couldn't simply walk away. I came here looking for salvage. I found something far more important. I don't know what the future looks like for us, but I'm not running off. A tremulous smile spread across her face. He touched her cheek gently, tracing the faint glow beneath her skin. We'll figure this out. One step at a time. First, let's make sure the Guardian is stable long-term. Then, we can decide where we go. She nodded, blinking back emotion. Yes. There is still much to do. But at least now, the station can sustain us while we plan. So began their new reality. The next few days blurred into a routine of repair work, gathering data on the Guardian's condition, and quiet moments of intimacy. They found themselves drawn together, sometimes laughing at how awkward everything was, two individuals from different worlds, bridged by cosmic serendipity. At times, Terran would catch her studying him with a gentle curiosity, as if marveling at the difference in their anatomies, their customs. He, in turn, became fascinated with her biology, the shifting glow that conveyed her every emotion. They learned to interpret each other's signals, building a shared vocabulary of touches and glances. He taught her some basic human card games using weathered decks from his salvage ship. She laughed at the strangeness of them, her hair-like filaments trembling with amusement whenever she got the upper hand. In return, she showed him how to listen to the station's pulses, how the hum of the Guardian resonated with the old walls, revealing hidden compartments or structural weaknesses. They were forging a partnership in every sense of the word, bound by the aftermath of that sacred union. Yet beneath the fragile peace, Terrence sensed looming dangers. The outpost was not entirely safe. They'd patched what they could, but some corridors remained collapsed. And the outside world was full of potential threats, scavengers like him, corporate hunters who might exploit the Guardian for profit, or the unstoppable creep of cosmic hazards. More than once, Terran thought about leaving with Zara, seeking out her homeworld or forging a new path together. But she wasn't quite ready to abandon her vow of safeguarding the station's Guardian. And if he was honest with himself, a part of him had grown attached to the place, and to her. One evening, after a long day of manual labor, they shared a meal of ration packs and a strange fermented paste Zara had salvaged from her people's abandoned stores. The tangy flavor made Terran's eyes water, but he chuckled when he saw how her glow brightened, apparently enjoying his reaction. They sat cross-legged on the floor of a once grand observation deck, the starfield stretching out before them. She leaned against him, her scales catching the faint starlight. He draped an arm around her shoulders, feeling the comfort of her warmth. You think your species could come back for this station someday? He asked quietly. Rebuild? She sighed, nuzzling closer. We're scattered. Many are in hiding, some enslaved, some exiled. If I can prove the Guardian survived, maybe they will gather. Maybe we can begin anew. He pressed a soft kiss to her temple. I'll help you any way I can. Her hand found his, fingers curling gently. I know you will. She gazed up, meeting his eyes. A quiet intensity passed between them, reminding him of the night they had sealed their bond. The memory stirred a lingering heat in his blood. She must have sensed it because her glow shifted to a soft pink. He leaned in, capturing her mouth in a languid kiss that carried a promise of deeper solace. They took their time, exploring the tenderness that had begun to define them. But peace seldom lasted long in Terran's life. A few days later, while they were recalibrating a power relay near the main docking bay, an alarm sounded, a proximity alert. Terran cursed under his breath. The station's external sensors, half-functional as they were, had picked up an incoming ship. He rushed to the nearest console to check the readouts. A medium-sized transport was approaching, no identification code broadcasting. Could be scavengers, Terran muttered, adrenaline surging. He turned to Zara, who looked as alarmed as he felt. Stay behind me. Let's see if they try to dock. They made their way to the docking bay, Terran's sidearm in hand. Zara's glow had shifted to a tense purple, her posture rigid. Through the observation window, they saw the craft latch onto one of the outpost's docking ports. Terran felt a sinking dread. Anyone who boarded now could be trouble, especially if they sensed the station was more than a heap of junk. If they discovered the Guardian, it might spell disaster. The docking bay doors opened, and several figures stepped through, wearing patched armor and heavy boots. Their leader was tall, with a scar running down the side of his face. He carried a rifle that looked far from friendly. Terran knew the type all too well, mercenaries or pirates hunting anything of value. The man's eyes swept across the bay, settling on Terran and Zara. Who are you? The stranger demanded, voice echoing. This station belongs to the consortium. We have claims to salvage anything inside. Terran stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. The consortium abandoned this place years ago. There's nothing left here worth taking, friend. He tried to sound casual, but his stance was tense, ready for a fight. The stranger leveled his rifle, lip curling. We'll decide that. Stand aside. His gaze landed on Zara, and a flicker of predatory interest lit his eyes. What have we here? He took a step closer, ignoring Terran's sidearm. Didn't expect to find a pretty alien on a derelict station. Must be something valuable after all. Zara's glow pulsed with alarm. She pressed herself closer to Terran's side, her voice taut. Leave. There is nothing for you here. One of the man's companions sneered. We'll see about that. Step away from the consoles. Now. Terran's mind raced. He could try to bluff, claim that the station was rigged to blow or something equally dramatic. But these guys looked rough, the type who only believed what they could see. And if push came to shove, Terran had a sidearm against their rifles, a poor match. Zara's abilities were unknown. Even if she had some hidden strength, it would be risky. He decided to stall. Look, we've barely gotten a few scraps from here ourselves. The place is practically falling apart. Maybe we can make a deal. You take what you want, leave us enough air to survive. No one has to get hurt. The lead mercenary let out a coarse laugh. A deal? Sure. We'll take everything, and maybe we won't shoot you both in the head. Now step away. Reluctantly, Terran lowered his sidearm a fraction. Zara tensed beside him. He could almost sense her fury pulsing beneath her skin, but she held back. The mercenaries advanced, scanning the consoles. Then, one noticed the readouts indicating stable power in the lower decks. He frowned. I thought you said this place was wrecked. Why are these systems showing active? Terran bit his tongue. We managed to get partial power. Just enough to breathe. That's all. But the mercenary tapped the screen, reading some data Terran hadn't had time to mask. The words, Guardian Chamber, glowed in bold letters. What's the Guardian Chamber? The man demanded, spinning around to glare at Terran. Is that some kind of hidden vault? Zara spoke up, her voice ice cold. It is not for you. One of the mercenaries snorted. We'll see about that. Show us. Now. Terran held out a hand. Look, trust me, it's not valuable. Just old junk. Move! The leader barked, jamming the rifle barrel into Terran's back. Zara let out a low hiss of protest, but Terran placed a calming hand on her arm. They had no choice but to comply, at least for the moment. They led the mercenaries through the winding corridors, tension palpable. Terran's gut churned with the knowledge that these thugs would see the cocoon, would realize it wasn't just salvage. They might try to capture Zara or experiment on her for secrets. They might do worse. And the Guardian, that fragile living intelligence they had fought to save, could end up in the hands of ruthless opportunists. As they neared the Guardian chamber, Terran's thoughts raced for a plan. Could he sabotage the mercenaries somehow, maybe vent the corridor behind them? But that might kill them all if done wrong. He glanced at Zara. Her glow had shifted to an ominous red. He wondered if she had a strategy of her own, or if she was as cornered as he felt. The memory of their bond lingered in the back of his mind like a well of shared strength, but he had no idea if it could help them now. When they finally entered the chamber, the mercenaries paused, momentarily stunned by the flickering lights and the massive, organic cocoon. The lead man whistled low. "Well, that's something. Some big biotech device. Must be worth a fortune in the right hands. Boys, we'll be rich." He motioned for one of his men to step forward and examine it. Zara stepped protectively in front of the cocoon. "You do not understand. This is sacred to my people. You cannot remove it, or you will kill it." "Sacred, huh?" The leader sneered. "I bet someone out there is willing to pay big credits for a living artifact." He raised his rifle. "Step aside." Terran felt desperation flood him. He surged forward, attempting to knock the rifle away. The man was faster, slamming the butt of the weapon into Terran's midsection. Pain exploded, and Terran staggered, doubling over. Another mercenary grabbed Zara, twisting her arm behind her back. She hissed in pain, her glow flaring crimson. The mercenary seemed oblivious or unimpressed by her bioluminescence. "She's a feisty one," the man holding her muttered. "Might fetch a good price in certain markets too." Terran's anger flared. "Get your hands off her." He struggled to stand, vision swimming. But the lead mercenary aimed his rifle at Terran's head, halting him in place. The mercenaries began examining the cocoon, placing scanning devices on its surface. Terran's heart pounded. He had to do something. Zara, pinned against the dais, locked eyes with Terran. Her expression was stricken but resolute, and he caught the faintest shift in her glow. A memory flickered in Terran's mind, the moment they had performed the bonding. He'd felt the Guardian's power surge through them. Had that power left them entirely, or was there still a residual link? He clenched his fists, desperate for an opening. The leader nodded to his companion. "Cut it open, see what's inside." Horror washed through Terran. Zara made a strangled sound, her luminous eyes wide with alarm. The mercenary pulled out a saw-like tool that whirred menacingly. Time seemed to slow as the man approached the cocoon. Terran lunged, ignoring the rifle aimed at him. He managed to knock the saw-wielding mercenary off balance. A shout rang out, the bullet whizzing past Terran's ear and ricocheting off the chamber wall. Zara twisted free of her captor's grasp with surprising agility, elbowing him in the side. Before he could recover, she pressed both palms to his chest, her glow intensifying in rapid pulses. Terran wasn't sure what she was doing, but the man stumbled back, dazed, as if she had unleashed some kind of bioelectric charge. The leader cursed, taking aim again. Terran dove behind the dais for cover, adrenaline in overdrive. In the chaos, a panel beside the cocoon lit up. The Guardian, sensing the threat, unleashed a faint ripple of energy through the floor. The mercenary staggered, disoriented for a moment. Zara seized the opportunity. With fluid grace, she snatched Terran's sidearm from the ground where it had fallen. She fired at the lead man's rifle, striking it. Sparks flew, and he dropped the weapon with a pained shout. Another mercenary rushed at Terran with a knife. Terran fumbled, dodging a wild slash. He jabbed his elbow into the attacker's face, hearing a crunch as the man's nose broke. The mercenary crumpled. The lead man, now unarmed, scrambled for his downed rifle. Zara aimed and fired once more, grazing his shoulder. He howled, clutching the wound as blood seeped through his armor. Breathing ragged, Terran steadied himself. The saw-wielding mercenary advanced toward Zara from behind, but Terran lunged, hooking an arm around the man's neck. They struggled, the saw screeching dangerously close to Terran's ear. Finally, Terran twisted, slamming the mercenary's head into the dais. The man collapsed with a groan. All around them, the flickering lights of the Guardian chamber pulsed with renewed intensity, as if the Guardian itself were reacting to the violence. Thick tension hung in the air. The lead mercenary, cornered and injured, glared hatefully at Terran and Zara. "You worthless scum!" he hissed. "You think you've won?" But he was bleeding badly, his bravado wavering. Terran advanced, picking up the rifle from the ground. He aimed it squarely at the man's chest. "We don't want any more bloodshed," Terran said, his voice shaking with fury. "Get your men, get back to your ship, and leave. Now." The mercenary spat on the floor, grimacing in pain. But he seemed to sense that he was outmatched, especially with the unknown factor of the Guardian's powers. "Fine," he growled. "But this isn't over. If we made it here, others will too. You can't keep this station secret forever." With that, he scrambled to drag his unconscious companions out of the chamber. Terran and Zara followed at a distance, ensuring the men truly vacated the station. In the docking bay, the mercenaries retreated to their ship. With a final glare, the lead man sealed the hatch, and the transport pulled away from the outpost, vanishing into the star-dappled void. For several long moments, Terran and Zara stood in silence, hearts pounding, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Finally, Terran let out a shaky breath. "They'll be back," he said grimly. "Or someone else will. Word will spread." Zara's glow had dimmed to a subdued hue. "Yes," she said quietly. "We can't hide forever." She let the sidearm slip from her fingers, as though suddenly overwhelmed. Terran caught her before her knees buckled, guiding her gently to the floor. She pressed her forehead to his chest, trembling. "I've put you in danger," she whispered. "And the Guardian isn't safe." He curled an arm around her, stroking a hand over her hair filaments. "Hey, we made it through this one. We'll figure out a plan. But we might need to move the Guardian, or at least find some place more secure." She lifted her gaze, eyes glistening. "We have limited options. To move the Guardian could kill it if we don't have the proper equipment. And my people are scattered. I don't know if any remain who could help us." Terran let out a slow exhale. This was bigger than just an old station now. "We could look for allies. I've got contacts across a dozen trade routes, smugglers, traders, maybe even a few sympathetic exiles. If we can find the right people, we could relocate the Guardian and keep it a secret. Or rebuild the station's defenses here." Zara nodded, though doubt haunted her features. "It would take time. We have to remain vigilant until then." He pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. "We'll manage. I'm not leaving you alone in this." The memory of their shared bond flared again, reminding him that their destinies were now entwined. They spent the rest of the day securing the station. Terran rigged some perimeter alarms. Zara checked the Guardian's condition. Despite the battle, it remained stable, its newly awakened energies unperturbed, as though it trusted them to protect it. That night, Terran couldn't sleep. He stood by one of the observation windows, gazing at the starfield. He felt her presence behind him before he heard her soft footfalls. She slid her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek against his back. "You should rest," she whispered. He turned in her embrace, cupping her face in his palms. The star's faint glow outlined her features, highlighting the scaled ridges along her cheeks. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was steadfast and brave, carrying the weight of her entire culture on her shoulders. "Couldn't rest," he admitted. "Too busy thinking of ways to keep you safe." She brushed her lips against his, a gentle, wordless thanks. He let the warmth of the moment envelop them. But beneath that warmth lay an unspoken urgency. Time was running short. The mercenaries' visit proved that. They needed a plan, and soon. The next days brought frantic preparation. Terran patched up his shuttle's engines, ensuring it was flight-ready if they had to make a hasty escape. Zara scoured the station for relics of her people's knowledge, hoping to find data on how best to relocate the Guardian. Every so often, they would cross paths in the corridors, exchanging lingering glances and soft touches that belied the stress of their situation. Their bond had grown, weaving itself into every aspect of their shared life on the station. Yet Terran worried about how it would survive the challenges ahead. He still had no idea what it truly meant for a human to be bonded in such a way. Would it wear off if they were separated? Would it draw them together no matter what? Then, a breakthrough. Zara discovered an ancient codex hidden behind a sealed hatch near the Guardian chamber. Inside were dusty tablets etched with her people's script and diagrams that seemed to show a method for forming a portable stasis field around the Guardian. "If we can replicate this," she told Terran excitedly, her glow brightening to a fervent gold, "we may be able to move the Guardian without killing it. But we need the correct components." Terran scanned the diagrams, trying to decipher the archaic language. "Looks like some kind of specialized energy lattice. We might be able to cobble it together from modern parts, but we'll have to find them. And that means going off station, trading or scouring black markets." She nodded. "Yes. And we have no guarantee we can do it quietly. But if we succeed, we can relocate the Guardian to a safer place, maybe even to the remains of my homeworld, or somewhere hidden. Then you wouldn't need to risk everything staying here." He gave her a measured look. "We'd still be risking everything out there. But at least we'd be moving on our own terms." And so, a plan formed. They would leave the station temporarily, traveling aboard Terran's shuttle. They'd visit a handful of fringe outposts, gathering the components needed to build a stasis field. It would be dangerous. They'd have to dodge bounty hunters, mercenaries, or anyone who might catch wind of their mission. But the alternative, waiting on the station for the next wave of pirates, was equally risky. When the day came to depart, they made sure the Guardian was stable, rigging an automated system to keep the station running at minimal power. Zara stood in the docking bay, watching as Terran loaded gear into his shuttle. Her glow pulsed with apprehension. "I haven't left this station since I arrived all those cycles ago," she murmured. "It feels like I'm abandoning my vow." He took her hand gently, lacing their fingers. "You're not abandoning it. You're fulfilling it in the only way left. And you're not alone." She squeezed his hand in return, a faint smile tugging at her lips. They boarded the shuttle, settling into the cramped cockpit side by side. Terran powered up the engines, the old machine rumbling to life. As they lifted off, the station receded behind them, a lonely silhouette against the starry void. Zara gazed at it through the viewport, eyes shining with an emotion Terran couldn't quite name. Determination, regret, hope, all swirled in her luminescent depths. Leaving the station was both liberating and frightening. For Terran, it was a return to the drifting life he'd known, but now he had a partner, someone who shared a bond that went deeper than mere circumstance. For Zara, it was a step into the unknown, armed with only her vow, her trust in Terran, and the newly awakened tether to the Guardian that pulsed faintly within her. They charted a course for the nearest outpost that might have the parts they needed. During the journey, they navigated together, bantering about the quirks of the shuttle's outdated systems. Zara marveled at each jump into FTL, pressing her face to the small window. Terran smiled at her childlike wonder. In quieter moments, they let themselves indulge in the magnetic pull between them, sharing lingering kisses in the cramped sleeping berth, or whispering half-formed plans about the future. Each day brought them closer emotionally, forging a companionship that neither had anticipated. Yet a kernel of tension remained, the reality that they were heading into danger. The first outpost they visited was a pit stop on a fringe world, a dusty planet with minimal law enforcement. Perfect for finding black market tech, but also prime territory for unsavory types. They sat down in a rickety docking area, paying a small bribe to a local official who seemed disinterested in anything beyond her immediate profit. Terran led Zara through the bustling bazaar, where vendors hawked everything from stolen starship parts to exotic alien pets. Zara clung to his arm, eyes wide at the chaos and noise. Her glow, hidden beneath a cloak Terran insisted she wear, flickered with anxiety. They found a parts dealer Terran vaguely remembered from an old job. The man was a wiry, sharp-faced fellow named Grek. He eyed Terran with a mix of suspicion and grudging camaraderie. "Heard you got yourself into trouble again," he said, spitting on the ground. "And who's this?" He peered at Zara, trying to peer under her hood. Terran kept his voice neutral. "Just a partner. We need some specialized emitter components. Old tech, top-tier frequency modulators." Greg let out a low whistle. "That'll cost you. You got credits?" Terran handed over a handful of small data chips. "There's enough on there to cover it, if your prices are fair." Greg rubbed his chin. "I might have something in the back that fits your specs. But I'll need a bit more incentive to part with it. These are rare times, you know." Zara stiffened beside Terran, sensing the man's greed. Terran tried to negotiate, forcing a casual grin. "Incentive? I'm sure I can toss in a few salvage rights on my next haul. Name your price." He leaned against the vendor's stall, ignoring the creeping sense that eyes across the bazaar were on them. After some haggling, they struck a deal. Greg disappeared into a cluttered storeroom and returned with a battered crate. He pried open the lid, revealing a set of cylindrical emitters. Terran carefully examined them. They looked old, but if they worked, it would be exactly what they needed for the stasis field. Zara cast him a questioning glance. He nodded. They made the exchange, stashing the crate in a hovercart. Terran exhaled, relieved to have found at least part of what they needed. But as they turned to leave, Greg called after them. "Stay safe out there, Terran. Word is there's a hefty bounty on any new alien tech. Might want to keep your friend's face covered." Terran's blood ran cold. He gave a curt nod and led Zara away. They repeated similar transactions at 2 more fringe outposts, assembling the puzzle pieces required to create the stasis field. Each stop brought new risks. Rumors circulated about a blossoming black market demand for organic technology, specifically from a lost alien race. Terran's nerves were on edge, especially after glimpsing a wanted bulletin in one dusty bar. It showed a grainy image of a vaguely reptilian silhouette, accompanied by a massive credit reward. Though it wasn't a perfect resemblance to Zara, it was close enough to set off alarm bells. He urged her to stay hidden, traveling at odd hours, avoiding repeated appearances in public. Tension weighed on them both, though in private they clung to each other, finding solace in their bond. When they finally collected the last crucial part, a delicate energy converter that cost nearly all Terran's remaining credits, they set course back to the outpost station. The journey was fraught with dread. They feared the possibility of mercenaries lying in wait. Terran changed coordinates twice, skirting uncharted space, taking a longer route to shake off any potential pursuers. Zara spent the time studying the codex, memorizing the steps to assemble the stasis field. Terran occasionally caught her frowning, luminous eyes lost in thought. He'd slip beside her, rubbing her shoulder soothingly. She'd lean into him, tension dissolving into tender closeness. At last, they arrived back at the station's coordinates. Terran's heart pounded as he maneuvered the shuttle alongside the docking collar. No signs of damage or infiltration, an initial good omen. They docked carefully, sealing the airlock. The station's interior was as they left it, dim and echoing. The partial power still hummed. Zara hurried to the Guardian's chamber, anxious to see if it had fared well in their absence. The cocoon pulsed with a gentle glow that seemed to greet her. She let out a joyful exhale, pressing her hands to its surface. Terran felt relief flood him, a weight lifting from his chest. It was as though the Guardian had sensed their return, that the bond remained unbroken. They wasted no time in hauling the crates of parts from the shuttle to the chamber. Zara consulted the codex and began laying out the components in a pattern around the cocoon. By the station's old chronometer, they worked tirelessly for more than a day. Terran rigged power couplings while Zara calibrated the emitter frequencies. The Guardian hummed softly as though in anticipation, responding to the swirl of energies that began coalescing. Exhausted but determined, they pieced together the stasis field generator, consulting the ancient diagrams for guidance. Finally, in the dead hush of the station's night cycle, they were ready for a test run. Terran wiped sweat from his brow, exchanging a tense look with Zara. "Here goes nothing," he said, activating the field. The emitters glowed, forming a lattice of shimmering energy around the cocoon. The Guardian's pulses spiked, then settled, enveloped by a faint luminescent shell. Zara placed her hand over her mouth, eyes brimming with hope. "It's stable," she whispered. "Yeah," Terran agreed, breathless. "Seems stable." He approached, placing a tentative hand against the field's edge. His hand passed through easily, but he sensed a mild resistance, like a gentle static barrier. If the Codex was correct, this field would protect the Guardian during transport, providing the environmental conditions it needed. Zara launched herself into Terran's arms with a joyous laugh. He hugged her tightly, burying his face in her hair filaments. They allowed themselves a few precious minutes of celebration, the weight of their success crashing over them. The next step would be physically detaching the cocoon from the dais, which required specialized surgical cuts in the organic metal plating. And that would be delicate, not to mention time-consuming. Terran braced himself. "We should start. The sooner we get the Guardian aboard the shuttle, the sooner we can find a safer place." Zara nodded, determination glowing in her eyes. Together, they began the painstaking process. Terran used a laser cutter to sever the metal lines linking the cocoon to the floor, while Zara employed a specialized resonance blade for the organic tissue. Each cut had to be precise so as not to harm the Guardian. Time stretched on. After hours of meticulous work, the cocoon separated from the dais with a soft, wet sound, resting entirely within the stasis field. Zara let out a choked sob of relief. The Guardians had been anchored to those dais systems for centuries. Now it was free, dependent on their newly constructed field for survival. They carefully lifted the cocoon, cradled by the shimmering energy shell. It was heavier than it looked, forcing them to move slowly through the corridors toward the docking bay. Fear of dropping it or damaging the field kept Terran's muscles taut. Each step felt like a monumental effort, but at last they reached the shuttle. With painstaking care, they maneuvered it inside the cargo area. The hum of the stasis field thrummed through the deck plating. Zara exhaled in relief, pressing her palm to the cocoon's surface as though reassuring the Guardian. Terran collapsed onto a nearby crate, adrenaline spent. They shared a smile, exhausted, triumphant. The station, abandoned now by its original caretakers, no longer tethered them. They'd done what they came to do. The Guardian chamber was empty, and the outpost might drift alone, a hollow shell. Zara closed her eyes, glowing tears slipping down her cheeks. Terran rose and enveloped her in his arms. "It's okay," he murmured. "We have it now. The vow continues." She nodded, letting her tears fall silently for a moment. Then she gently disengaged. "Let's go. Before more scavengers arrive." Terran agreed. They initiated final shutdown procedures on the station, ensuring no critical meltdown would occur in their absence. Then they boarded the shuttle, sealing the hatch behind them. With a soft rumble, the engines engaged, carrying them away from the station that had once been Zara's entire world. In the cockpit, Terran programmed a course for a distant sector rumored to have hidden sanctuaries. They had no guarantee of safety, but it was the best lead he had. Zara sat beside him, her gaze flicking between the starfield ahead and the cargo hold's readouts behind. The Guardian's presence pulsed faintly, a comforting reminder that their bond, forged in passion and necessity, was still alive. Terran reached for Zara's hand. She took it, lacing their fingers, and gave him a brave smile. Their journey was just beginning, but they faced it together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they carried with them the luminous promise of a new beginning, one shaped by trust, survival, and the raw, unbreakable connection they had forged in that derelict station. No matter what else the galaxy threw at them, they had found a home in each other's arms, and neither Terran nor Zara intended to let that go.